Well, it's 7 minutes past 10 p.m. on Friday, the 29th of December 2017 here in Sydney, and order is missing. So I hope everything's okay, but I thought I'd start the live stream anyway. I'm not sure if anybody is on as yet. Let me have a look at my pop-out chat. I think the pop-out chat is ingenious. It's helped me so much. Oh, so we've got a couple on. Joel DeMarie, Liz Hall, hello. I hope you're all well. Looking forward to the new year. My goodness, how the year has flown. It's incredible. We're going into 2018, a year that is also going to be one that brings about change and trying to multitask things. So, well, thank you. I feel actually very tired. I haven't been sleeping too well. I think we've got another visitor in our home, but they're not presenting themselves yet. There's just a lot of noise going on. So I'm going to check, just make sure the audio is okay. Audio. Oh, I don't know why I always get itchy nose with this portable air conditioner. I don't know why I don't just get one put in this room. Every other room in the house has got the ducted air conditioning, but this room, because it's been like in its original state, if you know what I mean. So maybe that's why it's so active. Let me just... Okay, so we've got volume. Oh, the volume looks okay, which is good. It's not too crackly. Where's she? I don't really know if I've lost weight. I mean, I'm not exactly dieting. I've got a McDonald's McFrappe. I got lazy tonight. I couldn't be bothered cooking. So, no, I don't think I've lost weight. Maybe it's just the lighting. You know, when you're in the dark, you sort of look a bit slimmer. But maybe. Who knows? I'm actually taking those silica tablets for my hair, nails, and skin, which they seem to be, you know, giving me some good collagen. I wouldn't say, I don't know how it works, but oh, thank you, my necklace. Yes, my daughter's bought this for me some time ago. It's quite heavy, actually, because it is actually rubies or whatever they're called. I'm not too sure the name of them. But, yeah, quite an investment. I said, yeah, they could have bought a car for what they'd spent on these damn things. But anyway, what do you do? But it's nice to be loved. Okay, so order is missing. I don't know what's been happening or that type of thing. I do. I look slimmer. Wow. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe it's because I'm working nearly 18 hours a day sometimes and hardly stopping to eat. But yeah, I have my moments. One day I'm sort of like the SpongeBob, where I absorb a lot of water and I just look like some kind of, you know, landed blimp. And then other days, I don't know, you have these moments. So good morning I'm going to give a few shout outs here. We've got Joelle D. Murray, Liz Hall, Vimit Tripathi, Irish Stevo, where are we? Nobody Believes Me Paranormal, Ray. Yeah, so this is what we have at the moment. I'm going to also give a shout out to my patrons while I'm here. So bear with me. I'm hopeless when it comes to names. Numbers are like Rain Man with me, but when it comes to names, forget it. Shara Arts, Whispers from Heaven, Kimmy Blackshaw, Surfer Roses, Spring Trap Trap, Janice Ellen Turbot, The Sound of Snow, I love that name, and Paranormal Ray. So These are my patrons. I hope Order's okay. Has anyone actually heard from Order? Is everything okay with Natalie? Potato? I don't know. I don't know what that means. Anyone heard from him? I did send a message. No reply. Okay. Oh, is she? Oh, it doesn't sound good. They're not pleasant either, having to go through that. The stress alone. Oh, dear. Wow. Yeah, I do hope he's okay. It's not like him not to make contact. Unless he's got some internet problems. Who knows? Who knows these days? All right, now, I thought just for something different, today we would do scary stories. But what I was looking for were ones that were to do with supposed true stories that are supposed to be scary. But I want to first hear about people's thoughts in the chat room about what draws you to macabre things. You know, like, one thing I find very interesting with the human race is, and this was only by the fact that I went past, I was on the M5 freeway, and I had to get one of those e-tag things just to be able to drive on the damn thing. But anyway, cut a long story short, driving on there was this accident, and with the accident, everyone was rubbernecking. I mean, it was ridiculous. There was no one injured, but it was just, you know, a rear ender. And of course, everyone's slowing down to a snail pace, having a look. And I can't understand the logic of some people. It's like they're looking for gore. That's the way I see it. Or even when you've got vehicles that are on the back of these trucks, and you could be, I mean, like, just behind the truck or behind another vehicle, and the vehicle is slowing down to have a look at this pranged up car, which is almost squished beyond recognition. I don't know whether they're looking for blood or what they're looking for, but it's quite disturbing when you think about it. And I know that you see a lot of this happening. It is probably a curiosity, but do they really want to see something? You know, I actually had a client once who came for many readings many moons ago, and they would tell me how they would actually go hiking just in case they came across a body. And I thought, okay, so you want to see that? And they said, oh, yeah, I'd love to find a body when I go hiking. And I thought, this is disturbing. You know, like, to me, it's disturbing. Probably because of the fact that, you know, when you have spiritual contact and stuff like that, and you're hearing about how they passed away and what they went through, I don't know. I don't know why people, I don't know, maybe I'm just weird. Irish Stevo says, watching a train wreck, some type, was it? Watching a train wreck type thing probably is, it can cause more accidents. That's so true. Liz says, you can watch, but you can't look away. But they actually slow down. And they're almost hanging out the window. So it is quite, you know, to me, it's weird. But I just thought I'd get everyone's take on that. Good morning, Tarabelle, Nurse Calls. Thank you for joining. And just to sort of like, you know, I'm not even going to go to my other video. It is more of a curiosity. Perhaps Nurse Calls would perhaps understand that when you're around either the dying or, you know, in my case, spirit, you sort of you go past that morbid attraction of wanting to see that kind of thing. So Appy Droid, thank you for joining. So I'm going to just send another invite. Where are we? I'll send another invite to Order. You know when you've got an air conditioner blowing and you've got these fine, very fine baby hair that seems to blow in your face, and when you've got lippy on, it's like a magnet. It just goes. That's what I'm having, one of those moments. So if you see me going like this, you'll know what that's all about. Okay, now let me just have a look. Okay, so I've got the live chat over here. All right. Got a call out to a motorbike accident once, smashed into a wall, body parts in different places. It's not like most people think. It's sad, and most people actually can't handle the mentality of it all. Oh my God. I think there was one occasion I didn't see this accident, but it was my other half, my ex, he just came in with his laptop and he said, "Oh, have a look at this." And in my face was this poor guy on a motorbike who had gone into the back of a lorry, and his head had impaled almost between like where the door of the lorry at the back was, and it had decapitated. So all you saw was like blood and this, and I was taken away. I don't want to see it. I think at one point there I had this, I've just got a message, bear with me. Not from Order, from my ex. It was his mother's funeral today. I'm just going to write, "I'll talk later." Okay. Yeah, his mother was absolutely a lovely person. And today was her funeral, which is quite sad. Nurse Calls says, "Yes, so true. I've gotten used to death, but I get scared when charts or doors slam and there's no air breeze or no one else in the room." Curious people, though, don't look. I promise it will scar you if you're not prepared. That's, I could, like that video that he showed me, I wasn't even there. It wasn't actually right in front of it, but just the video alone really disturbed me. And there was another one that he showed me, and that was one of the soldiers who were captured by ISIS, I think it was, that time. And they had him talking, and he was wearing like that orange, I don't know whether he had orange one-piece tracksuit or whatever they call them, and they decapitated him. Does everyone remember that? Those poor American soldiers that were captured, and they were literally, their heads cut off and stuck on their body. And I was screaming watching it. And it was like, I wasn't, and this is something that was weird for me, because I didn't go out of my way to, God, I didn't go out of my way to seek that. I don't know, to be honest with you, I don't know whether it was something that came up on the news that was like on this page, and I was going to read the news and it went straight to this video. But the video wasn't edited to the point where you didn't, like, anything was blurred out. You actually saw and you heard the gurgling and the, oh, it was awful, absolutely awful. And I know my other half was with me. I think he had it going, and I just couldn't, I couldn't handle it. And I sat crying. I literally sat crying because of the fact that this poor man was asking for help, and then they just went in there with not even a, what was like a clean cut. It was like like this, and cutting it. Oh God, I will never forget that, ever. And then, I mean, he was showing, he would actually bring in the, he would talk about it, and just talking about it, I was getting visuals. So how any human being could even take another person's life, to actually hold a knife, you would feel the pressure of where you're cutting, you would feel like the resistance, if that makes sense to you, and to do it without conscience. This guy had his arms bound. It's not as though he was able to defend himself or fight back or anything like that. They were animals, absolutely. I mean, I can't even say animals, because animals only kill if there's a reason. But it was just disgusting and so disturbing. And this is what I mean about humanity. There's so much cruelty and twisted behavior in humanity alone, and yet you ask a person, how would you feel if you came in, you know, face to face to a spirit? Oh, I'd crap my pants. And then you think you'd crap your pants over that, but not seeing an actual person being murdered in front of you or something like that. And then you've got people, I mean, I'm an animal lover, but regardless of that, you've got people who say, I can handle seeing a person get killed, but if it came to an animal, I couldn't handle it. Really? What is the difference? When you think about it, living things, the desire to live is very strong. So naturally, an animal just has as much, you know, begging and pleading that they would be doing, though they don't verbally say it. And then you've got people who verbally scream, and I don't know whether it's because of the fact that they identify with animals not being able to communicate that, but it's a very twisted, morbid world. That's why I believe, you know, when they say in the Bible that Satan was cast down to earth to walk, you know, until the end of time. And this is why he's trying to take as many people with him as he can. I believe that this is hell. This is hell because of the fact there is so much evil in this world. It's beyond reproach. And I think one of our lessons here is to overcome that in some way, in a humanity type of way, a compassionate way for fellow man and animals and so on. And I mean, you don't know where to draw the line. You really don't. Nurse Cole says, I felt fingers run across the top of my back, and I shiver. Mike can see me jump out of my chair, and I ask, Mike Hen? I don't know whether that was like a typo, auto-correct thing. Ask her, did you just touch me? Her eyes bug out, and she says, let me get away from you. Let me get away from your eyes. Yeah, that would be terrible, Tara. I couldn't imagine personally having anyone in my family that are in the military. It's for fear of the cretins out there that are just evil people. So it is awful. It's really awful. But let's go and have a look at a few stories. So I hope you're all relaxed and got your coffee ready and so on. So I'm going to read out a few stories. I'm going to give you a choice. So now I came across a site. Bear with me for one moment. So this should be interesting because there's quite a few things on here. I haven't personally read any of them, so I thought, it would be like a first-hand experience. And by the way, don't worry about my nails. I ran out of nail polish remover. Can't find my cotton buds anywhere or the wipes or anything like that. And I thought the shops today weren't exactly helpful. They had none. So I'm now left with streaky looking ugly nails. So if you see my nails, you have. Now you know why. Okay, so what's this? There is very little compassion for people. I see a lot of people put their family members in nursing home and forget about them. Oh, look, before I go into that, yes, I agree. When I was about, I think it was 12 and 13, hang on, I might have been a little bit older. I think mum married when I was about 12 and a half. So, yeah, I would have been older, probably 13, 14. And I dragged my stepsister down to a nursing home. And I said, every weekend we're going to go to this nursing home. We're going to read to old people. And, I mean, I could have been out there roller skating with the other kids, doing other things, riding horses, and I chose to spend my weekends with elderly in a nursing home, voluntarily, of course. I mean, I just felt sorry for them. The fact that you go down there, you hear about them not having family visit, they seem to sort of, put them away type of thing, out of mind, out of sight, I guess you could say. So it was really sad, but beautiful in a bittersweet way, because I went down there and I was adopted by about 3 or 4 old grannies and one old man. And one particular old lady was bedridden, and God love her, she used to suck on the curtain beside her bed. It was like some kind of, pull around curtain thing, and she'd be sucking on it. So she was reverting to a childhood. And it was so sad. And then I remember they kept saying to me that I was their granddaughter. So I got to the point, I just said, yes, I am. Did you miss me? And they'd say, oh, yes, where have you been? And then they'd have the short-term memory loss, that they would think that I hadn't seen them for a long time. And I was only in there the week before. And so I'd sit down with them in this room where most of them were, in one particular big room, and I'd read them stories. And that from there went to reading to the blind. I used to actually record from newspapers things and put them on cassette, and they would be handed out to people who were blind so that they could actually keep up to date with what was going on in the local newspapers and so on. So I really I really love to do things for people, especially those that, you know, for whatever misfortune, they're unable to do things for themselves or they've been forgotten about. And I mean, there's only so much that you can do, but I remember leaving, every time I was leaving the nursing home, I would break down outside. I would literally break down and sob my heart out all the way home. Um, but what was also beautiful was seeing their partners with them. Now, we're talking about spirit here. So, I mean, I was a young kid. My stepsister was terrified, especially when the old ladies would come up and they'd hug her and they'd grab her cheeks and go like this to her and stuff like that. But they were absolutely gorgeous. And then seeing their partners with them, they didn't know that, well, some of them didn't know that they were around. But what was interesting is some of the ones that were actually, hi Ravenwolf, some of the ones that were actually, I don't know whether it was because they were nearing that time of their passing, but they actually saw them and they would be talking to them as I walk in the room, and I would actually acknowledge both of them. I'd say hello to the husband and I'd say hello to the wife, the lady. Um, there was one called Rosie. Oh my God, she was like 4 foot nothing, and I just wanted to cuddle her. She was like a little teddy bear, a beautiful old lady, and I think she was from a Macedonian background, so you can imagine her little voice. She had this beautiful, cute little face, and I just adored her. And I remember one day I walked in, and this was a time where, oh, is it? It's popping. Okay, sorry. I'll try to change this. Tell me if that's a bit better. I don't know why it does that. Let's see. Hang on. Does that make a difference? Oh, how lovely. You get to take your St. Bernard in. Yeah. When my grandmother was in a nursing home, I used to take Mozart down, and that's my dog. He's a rat terrier, and he would actually you know, he would pretty much approach the people. They didn't even have to call him. He'd go up there and he'd put his paws on the side of the bed and his head down. And actually, at one point, I said, "It looks like he's praying." You know, like he'd actually tuck his head down with his paws up on the bed, and they'd be patting his head, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. But I couldn't take him after a while because he gets smelly feet for some reason. And there are some dogs that get this, it smells like corn. And you try everything to sort of get rid of it, but it's like a BO for dogs. Who would have thought? So yes, that's what I used to do as a kid. Is my weekends. All right, so we've got some. Oh, still Poppy. It's not a default mic. It's any mic I put on. Hang on a minute. Let me just go and I'll just grab another. Hang on. Okay, is that better? Is that okay? Much better? Okay. So I'm using this one today. I don't know whether you can hear me on this side. Perfect. Good. Let's see how long this lasts. Because in this room, things do get pretty weird. Okay. Now, here are some of the stories. All they want is a little conversation and to be acknowledged. It's a nice way. It's nice when people take the time to do that. Yes, it is. I'll never forget, just on a side note, at school, when I was in high school, they said, who's got any suggestions of things that we can do, you know, as a class? And my suggestion was, let's go to the local nursing home. So I actually got all the class. So I went to a girls' high school, and we would go down to the local nursing home, and they absolutely loved it. So that was something different. The teachers were like, are you sure you want to go? And I said, yes, I love it. I go every weekend. So ever notice how pets bark or chirp when you feel a spirit around? Well, I'll tell you something funny. Mozart was in my room and Chris was talking to me, and I would assume he heard him, but he had his back to me and to Chris, and every time Chris would say something, he would begin to growl. He'd be like this, and I thought, he's not even turning to look at him. So he was actually, I'm not looking, but he was growling at Chris. And then Chris said, hello, Mozart, you know, like in his voice. And Mozart would go, so I don't know, silly dog. But sometimes he'll bark at anything. He thinks the postman's going to kill me, because every time the postman comes, he starts barking, and then he's like talking in his dog language. He's like, your cat chirps, but only when he's about to be cheeky. Your cat? Okay. Yeah, the HN2 mic is pretty good. I've got a Rode mic. This is I think it's the HN2 Rode. I've also got another one, Sennheiser or something like that. So yeah. All right. So what I'm going to do is give you a choice from the stories. So I hope you like stories. But these, I went specifically searching for stories that are typically supposed to be real, based on true events. So I'm going to give you a choice. I'll read them out. So, a Somali trait. What's a Somali trait? Yay, story time. So get your Irish Steve-O cups ready with your hot chocolate and your snoozers, which are your blankies. And let's get ready for some stories. So the first one, these are the choices you've got. So Tara writes, my dog will bark when a squirrel pops off. Farts. We call it pop off here. All right. So we've got these choices. The Witching Hour. 13 true ghost stories you shouldn't read. Then we have 30 nurses share their most blood-curdling hospital ghost stories. We have 10 funeral home workers share their most macabre and morbid stories. We have 13 people describe their eeriest experiences with shadow people. 10 delightfully spooky ghost stories that are supposed to be true and tales of the supernatural. 21 terrifying true horror stories that will keep you awake tonight. We have From the Beyond. 13 people share their true ghost stories. And then we have 30 doctors, nurses, and paramedics describe their most disturbing medical stories. We have true life encounters that prove you're not safe in your own home. We have graveyard shift workers shake their eeriest encounters with the supernatural. And then we have In the Blood, 19 people confess their deepest and darkest family stories or secrets. House of Horrors, 15 people share their true haunted ghost stories. Graveyard shift workers share their scariest things they've seen. Funeral homes, there's more. 15 terrified parents describe their child's disturbing imaginary friends. I can imagine my mother. 31 terrifying real-life horror stories that will chill you to the bone. 911 operators describe the most disturbing calls ever taken. Contacting the spirits. 15 people share their scariest Ouija board moments. Myths and monsters. 25 people share their own creepiest hometown legends. 15 hitchhikers, campers, and rangers share their eeriest experiences. 21 people share their creepiest experience of paranormal activity. 28 terrifying true tales of ghosts and other strange encounters. 13 true horror stories from a psychiatric ward. 10 cops share their scariest paranormal encounters. Fisherman Tales, 5 creepy ghost stories that will keep you off the water. 17 spine-chilling true stories that prove children can see ghosts. 13 creepy camping encounters that will put you off great outdoors. 8 morticians share their spookiest and most disturbing experiences. It just goes on and on and on and on. So out of 21 people share their scariest encounters with the supernatural. So tell me which of the ones I've said so far would you like me to read? You know, people say about the Ouija board that it's really bad and everything like that. Do you realise that in reality there's no difference between the Ouija board and spirit box? The only difference is you've got more verbal things coming through. Great word. Okay, we've got stories keep you awake 911. Yep. So let's see if we can narrow it down so you're all in agreement in our chat room. We've got funeral homes, graveyard, 911 calls, Ouija board. So let's try and narrow it down. So out of those ones that are up, funeral homes, Ouija board, and 911 in graveyard. Let's try and narrow it down. So one out of those. Yeah, you do need your arms there, Irish Stuvo. I think that might help. Unless you want to use your nose. Now that would be different. I would, let's see if we can get some people using their nose on the planchette. Have you ever tried the experiment where you've got to try and type a text message with your nose? I did. And autocorrect came up. A tiny wee bit of possession style. So come on. So we've got, I'll type them up here so you can choose from them. So we've got funeral homes, graveyard, Ouija, and 911. So out of the ones I've just put up, funeral homes, graveyard, Ouija, and 911. Let's take a vote. (911). Okay, so there's one vote for 911. Oh, it looks like 911 is going to win. Okay. Let's have a look. Oh. So it says here, no horror story can compare to what 911 operators have to deal with every single day. Here's a selection of the most disturbing tales they had to tell. Most of us will only ever talk to a 911 operator on the worst day of our lives. They listen to our stories of death, pain, and crime, all the while staying professional and calm. The job entails the ability to work under stressful situations, listening to the very worst aspects of life. And when the shift ends, what happens then? Who do they tell their stories to? A group of 911 operators share their unforgettable phone calls, and here is a selection of the most disturbing tales they had to tell. Daddy's eyes fell out. Had a call for a brother who killed his own brother with a hammer. The pick part. While the victim's little daughter was watching, the daughter called us from another room and told us her daddy's eyes fell out. The perpetrator was apprehended, daughter taken by a relative, had to smoke after that one, and I don't even smoke. That was short. I need your help. There was an old couple who lived on a rundown ranch, house about 20 miles east of the town. When the husband passed away, the woman would call 911 at least 3 times a week, asking for assistance with the very mundane tasks not normally dealt to first responders. I need help turning the thermostat up. I need help boiling water for my tea, etc. The woman developed dementia, and eventually it was progressed to the point where she believed she was calling 911 to ask her deceased husband for help. All of the dispatchers would recognise the address immediately, even though she could say was her husband's name. I need help. Please come home and help me. One day she called, and again was only able to repeat her husband's name. So in this case, they're going to call him John. John, I need help. Please come home and help me, John. By the time the first responders arrived on scene, they found the woman lying dead in her bed. The first unit on scene called dispatch to confirm that this was the woman herself who had called 911, as rigor mortis had already set in. We wrote it off as a fact that the heater in her house wasn't working, and the ambient temperature in the room was about 50 degrees. We continued to receive 911 calls from that woman at the address for just over a year after she passed away. Even after her home was vandalised and burnt to the ground, the phone calls did not stop. John, I need your help. John, please come home and help me. We were obligated to send a response each and every time, but not once did we find anyone on or near the property. Multiple calls to the phone company confirmed that the phone line had been disconnected and the call was not coming from another address. Nurse call says, one time the fire alarm went off at work and the doors closed. And when 911 fire department came out, they knew what the area of the fire alarm thingy was pulled. They knew what area the fire alarm thingy was pulled, and the nurse said, I was here the whole time. No one pulled the fire alarm. The firefighters got scared. I could imagine. Glass breaking. 1979 New York City got a call from a crying child, a little boy, saying his mum and dad were fighting, and his dad said he was going to throw the mum out the window. I could hear a terrible fight going on in the background. Woman screaming, things breaking, man yelling, etc. The poor kid didn't know his address. We didn't have the technology for call ID and would have to use reverse telephone books. A trace would take forever. Anyway, while I'm trying to get the address, I hear a horrific scream and glass breaking. A few seconds later, the other operators in the room are getting calls about a woman lying in the courtyard who came out of a window. Very sad. Worst of all is that I'm sure someone else in this apartment building must have heard the fight, but no one called for help until it was too late. Poor kid, working 911 in New York City during the 70s, 80s was a nightmare. Alone in the dark. Sorry, alone in the house. Correction. The single worst call I've ever taken, though, was a woman who was calling in that she was hearing weird noises in her house. While walking through her house, she started screaming and told me that there's someone in her house. There were a couple of soft pops followed by a gargling sound. After the officers had cleared the house and found her, it finally came out during the investigation that her adult son had killed her while high and freaking out. Gunshots don't sound like you'd think on the phone. They're rather soft. It's an eerie sound, something so violent being so soft that if you aren't paying attention, you can miss it. How's that? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Static on the line. My uncle works for dispatch in my town, and he recently told my family of the weirdest call he'd ever gotten. He says that he had received a call from a landline one night, and when he answered, it was only static on the other end. Been there. This happened 2 more times. Finally, he called squad to go check out the address from the caller ID. When the cops got there and walked into the house, they immediately saw there was a dead body. The person had been dead for 5 months. The craziest part about it was there was no electricity or any other utility working. So there's no way they should have been able to get those calls into dispatch. But if they hadn't, who knows how long that person's body would have stayed there. Anyone getting scared yet? A long raspy exhale. Christmas Eve night, I answered 911 for a hysterical lady who was crying so hard she couldn't breathe. I asked her what was going on, and she told me these exact words. My boyfriend and I, we were watching a movie. I fell asleep. I woke up and he wasn't there. I thought this was a little odd, so I said, "Okay, ma'am, do you know where he may have went?" She wasn't done, she said. "I found him in our closet. He hung himself with our bed sheets." I walked her through cutting him down and starting CPR. When in the middle of it, he starts making this long, raspy exhale that sounds exactly like something from a horror movie. It's the rest of his air leaving his lungs. She starts getting hysterical again, begging him, "Oh my God, he's breathing. Please breathe, baby. Please breathe." But I knew that's not what he was doing. Police, fire, ambulance got there, and of course the guy was way dead. I felt so bad for the woman. That's really the only call that has ever stuck with me. Has anyone ever encountered spirits of animals? Yes. I photographed them as well. I have a video, I think it might be on I don't know whether it's on the Facebook page or up on YouTube, but it's actually of my cat. And she used to make this like noise because she couldn't actually meow. So she would call me Mama. So when she'd make this meow, it was like Mama. And then she'd make this sigh kind of sound. And not long after her passing, I could see her wandering around the short hall, and that leads to the staircase off another room. But anyway, she's walking around the short hall, and I called her, but she didn't seem to come towards me from the short hall. I feel like the short hall, I call it the short hall because we've got two halls in our home. We've got a long one and a short one. Anyway, I could see her, but she wasn't leaving it. So I don't know whether that was like a veil, if you want to put it that way. But she didn't come into my room per se. But in that hall, she would linger. And not far behind that hall, we have her ashes in a urn. But anyway, I actually went up and I was talking to her, and I recorded it, and you can actually see this wisp of grey, and she was grey, and this wisp of grey go by, and it would make that noise, like the way she would do it, and it was amazing. It was really amazing. So, yeah, beautiful. Liz says her dog and cat after they passed. And I've got many photos of my dog, Sam. He actually passed away in my arms. It was awful. I mean, the fact that that's the final time of them being physical, in a physical form, that's the sad part. Even, if you can see their spirit, the fact that their physical is no longer, that's always the hardest. And that's it's same with my other half, my ex. I call him my ex, but we're not divorced yet. But I don't know whether we're getting back together or what the story is, to be honest with you. But he lost his mother about a week ago. I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, one of the two. And he took it extremely well. He said she went peacefully, and she just opened her eyes a little and then took her last breath. Given the poor woman had cancer, initially they said 18 months, and they said 12, and then she just went completely downhill. It was I said to my daughter only the week before, I said, by Wednesday, I feel, Nana's going to leave us. So pray for her. Pray that, she is protected and everything. And sure enough, to the day, she passed away. But I didn't have the heart to say that to him because of the fact that I thought, you know, he would get upset, and it's not something you want to be telling anyone anyway. I mean, the only reason I said that with my daughter is because of the fact that I felt she wasn't getting any better. And even looking at a photo, you could tell she was going right downhill. So, but anyway, cut a long story short, he took it extremely well. And I thought the closure is going to be the funeral. And, I mean, he does suppress a lot of emotion. One thing I noticed with him, he does do that. He suppresses it. So even when it came to, like, when we had, you know, his cats and his dog, and, you know, he was bottling it up, but then you'd have a good old sob afterwards, you know, because, I mean, he's the kind of guy, he did wrong by me. He did wrong, having an affair while I was working and everything. But with every person, I always feel that there's some good. And I'll give you an example of his good. There was one day he was driving, and on his mirror of his side of his car, the side mirror, there was a snail. Now, he pulled up, took the snail off the mirror, and put it down on grass. He was driving when he saw this snail, and he said its antenna things or its eyes were going in, you know, with the wind. But he saved a snail. Now, there's got to be some good there. You know, that's how I look at it. Even a white cockatoo had been hit by a car. He actually got out of the vehicle and picked up this bird off the road and tried to save its life. So, unfortunately, it died. But, well, you know, as not too many birds are going to survive being hit by a car. And unfortunately, in hot weather, that's why I take it easy when I drive, because I know that birds fly very low to keep away from the heat. So their flight is a lot lower. So just remember, in hot weather, just remember birds, and, you know, drive a little more cautiously and so on. So let's go on with this. My mum was a 911 dispatcher in the early 90s. I was 5 years oldish in Washington State. When I got older, I remember asking her about some of the calls she could still recall. One in particular was pretty bad. She was working one year on Halloween night. At around 10 or 11, she had a call come that came, a couple of guys were driving around town with a dummy or something dragging behind their truck. The dummy was falling apart, and pieces of clothing, plastic, were being torn off and scattered around the city. Being Halloween, it seemed like a prank, but she had a patrol car try to find and stop the truck. As time goes by, more and more people started to call in about it. Eventually, the patrol car caught up with the truck, and it turned out it was a person. The guys had gone to a store earlier, and when they left, they had backed their truck into an elderly man whose clothes were caught in the rear bumper or whatnot. The two guys never even knew that they were dragging around another human being all across town for miles. The elderly man had passed away, and those pieces of clothing scattered around town was his clothing, flesh, and body parts. Still gives me chills. Ew. A man in the attic. I worked dispatch for a total of 3 months, and in that 3 months, I only received one call I would call creepy. It was the voice of a little boy, and I was trying to be calm because it felt like he was having a hard time breathing. I asked him if he was in danger, And he said, no, not anymore. I asked him why he had called, and he said, well, the man in the attic finally killed my mum. I asked him if I could still see his mum, and he said no. The man took her to another moon. No, the man took her to the moon. I asked him if he was alone in the house, to which he replied, no. I still have the man's dog here. I asked him what the doggy's name was, in the hopes I could keep the boy calm. The boy replied, his name is Shaitan. I asked him to say it again, thinking he said Satan, but he clearly replied, it's Shaitan. By the end of the call, the police showed up, and I still don't know whatever happened with the boy and his mother. But years later, I was researching the jinn, and according to ancient texts, evil spirits like jinn are able to manifest themselves as a dog or other animals, and guess what the jinn were known as? Shaitan. I still have a hard time sleeping at night when I think about this call. Possessed. I was a 911 call taker 10 years ago when I received one of the creepiest calls ever. It was freezing that night, which usually equaled a calm shift, and it was very quiet due to even the criminals not wanting to go outside. Way to go on that weather. Around 3 a.m., my call box popped up green, and as usual, I asked what was the emergency. A man started frantically screaming that he still was possessed by a demon and tried to cut his heart while he slept. He had ran with the attack started. He had ran when the attack started and locked himself in his bathroom. I asked him a series of questions, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. I asked him every time he tried to answer, I heard what sounded like a scratching and banging on the door. He whispered, there's a demon in my sister's body. It has been battling me for days. It's got free from the chains. I swear what I heard next chilled me to the core. This unearthly voice began taunting my caller through the door. It didn't sound like a 20-something-year-old woman. It was a low and guttural-like sounding gargling voice, like she gargled razor blades before speaking. She continued to growl and speak in a strange-sounding language until police arrived. She let out a terrifying scream when the officers broke in. Then dead end. That must be like the phone dropping out. The call was over. I was shaking and had to know what happened. Even my supervisor, who'd been listening to the call in real time, was pale and speechless when the line abruptly ended. Before my shift ended, the commanding officer on my creepy call called in to tell me what they'd found. He told me he would have nightmares for the rest of his life. Apparently, when my caller said his sister got out of her chains, he wasn't joking around. She still had a chain tied to a bloody handcuff when the officers came in. Her whole body was covered in self-inflicted scratches. Her one eye had popped a blood vessel and was bright red. Most of what she was wearing was all shredded, and her skin looked like she'd been drained of her blood. She was taken in for a psych consult, and as you probably guessed, stayed there for a long time. The brother was okay except for deep gouges in his chest. His sister literally tried to dig out his heart. There was some talk about arresting the brother, but nothing ever came of it. I still can vividly remember that voice. It still makes my blood run cold. No, I don't watch TV. We've got TV, but we don't watch it. There's no TV. But I am in the active room, so you can hear a TV. Let me try something. I think I might know what that is. I've been everywhere, man. Is that better? That should be better. Can you hear me? Let me know. Yeah, I think I know what it was. When the battery begins to run low on the ears, it begins to pick up on like radio signal. And because I've got in here a phone, so that if I can get either internal phone calls through the house, or I can actually get a phone call. It's linked up to two lines basically. So yeah, I can get an incoming phone call. So instead of having to run downstairs or into other rooms, I put a phone in here. Or if there's someone in the end of the house or at the front door, they can buzz through and it comes through the phone. So that may be where the signal is picking up that. So hopefully this will be a bit better. So that there are the 911 calls. Who enjoyed those? So what we might do is go on to the graveyard shift workers. They share their scariest things they've seen. So let's have a look. All right. Graveyard shift workers share the scariest things they've seen in the dead of night. Horrifying tales of paranormal activity, blood-curdling crimes, and the strange folk who only come out at night. Okay. Late at night, while the majority of us are safe and sound in our beds, there's an army of people out there working the graveyard shift. From hotel receptions to all-night gas stations and the emergency service. Ask any night shift worker, and they'll tell you when the sun goes down, things can get weird. Graveyard shift workers from around the world have been sharing their creepiest stories ever, recounting horrifying tales of paranormal activity, blood-curdling crimes, and strange folk who only come out in the dead of night. What's the temperature by you? Let me have a look-see. The temperature is 26 degrees. 26. Let me see what that is in Fahrenheit. 79 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. The basement. I used to work as a graveyard custodian in a building by myself. Now, when I started, I was told the building was pretty weird and that I should stay on my toes. I called BS, but after working there for a year, I was pretty much convinced something weird was happening. I was riding the elevator to a different floor, but instead of going to the floor, I went straight to the basement. The doors opened, and they are open for maybe 10 seconds or so I can't see anything in this room. All of a sudden, a dark figure starts walking toward the elevator, and I freaked out. They wrote, "I freaked the F out." I hit the doors to close and the figure just kept getting closer. I ended up standing outside of the building for a half hour or so while the police searched the basement. What really freaked me out is that the one entrance to the basement was locked and barred, and they didn't find anyone down there after searching anywhere. You know, that reminds me of a time I went to a hospital and I had the button pressed to go, I think it was like to the 6th floor, and it said it was going down first. So I thought, okay, I'll go for a ride instead of waiting. But I was the only one in the lift, and it went down to the morgue area. And, you know, like that didn't faze me so much. But when I got down there, no one was getting on the lift at all. And all of a sudden, I actually felt this cold breeze go right past me after the doors were open. I thought, okay, must be like the freezers and everything. Didn't take anything, you know, because I didn't see anything. But then once the doors shut, I could hear behind me, and this is the year that I'm deaf in, and I can hear spirit. And I could hear this man saying to me, "Thanks for the ride." So I was I was a bit taken back, but he didn't hurt me, he didn't touch me. It was just, you know, like someone leaning in towards you and just talking. And I turned around and he wasn't like showing himself. So yeah, that was interesting. Nurse Cos says, one time a Black American woman started yelling at me to get the skinny white man out of my bed. I looked and saw no one in her bed. The scary part, a Caucasian man died in her room. A week, it must be a week ago, a week before or something. So there you go. All right, so we've got white noise. A phone used to call me on 911 every night, make horrible screaming sounds, or sometimes white noise. Sounds like a facsimile. Whoever remembers those. And then disconnect. It scared the living out of me. The number was a landline for a vacant residence. The officers were sent out every time, but never found a thing. And I was repeatedly assured that the seconds on the line were due to a faulty phone line or the rain. But it never stopped bothering me. That's not really scary. Okay, so we've got the president's office. Around 12 years ago, I was working security at a small company headquarters in New York City. My partner for the night had called in sick. So I had to work from midnight to 6, all by my lonesome. Now, normally this wouldn't be a problem. I just had to sit in the back room, watch some cameras, and occasionally head out for a sweep. Nothing to do, right? Well, as it turns out, one of the employees had stayed in the building after hours, had managed to avoid my co-worker's sweep from the previous shift. I first noticed a movement in my peripheral vision in one of the screens, then again a few minutes later. This was odd because I was used to quiet nights in this particular building. I was a little scared when I headed down for my sweep. Sweep that up. But it was my job, so I grabbed my flashlight, headed out to begin. I had to start the sweep in one big hallway, and right as I entered, I saw a flash of movement at the end of it. At this point, I was sufficiently freaked out. I stood frozen for a minute or so, looking into the semi-darkness, unsure of what to do. The decision was taken out of my hands. However, as I heard a gunshot resound down the hallway, it was the scariest moment of my life. I slowly walked down the hallway to investigate. I reached the end and saw to my left the president's flag light was on. Slowly, I approached the door and creaked it open. Scared, poopless. I'm not going to say that word. What I saw will forever haunt me. The man had taken a seat in the president's chair and shot himself in the head with a pistol, splattering blood and brains all over the floor and the wall. Apparently, this guy was having problems at home, and because the president was supposedly a total a-hole to him, he decided to off himself and scare the crap out of the president at the same time. In any case, I threw up for a few times and called the police. I got the next 2 weeks off. I still have nightmares about it sometimes. Okay. Okay, now let me just scroll up. Okay, no trolling, please. Okay. So to the person who was posting messages, I'm just reading stories, and these are supposed to be true stories if you read the title of the video. So I had to delete the messages because I think you were taking it a little bit too out of context. So sorry for that. Hi, Matt. Nice for you to join. Not all, just a little note in what you just said there, Matt. We've got one of those crazy ones. I actually have a few friends who are Jehovah's Witness, and they're really nice. I think you just get the occasional fanatic who goes a little extreme, if you know what I mean, and you can't do anything without, you know, I bet you get that in different, you know, there's a multitude of people out there, but that you always crack me up. Okay, so that was an interesting story. Okay, let's go. The 6-foot extension cord. You can get that. Working the graveyard shift in a small motel all alone, had a guest who requested a 6-foot extension cord. Took me a while, but I found one, brought it to his room. The housekeeper found him dead the next day, hanged himself with the extension cord. How would you be if you, I mean, you don't think anything of it, you know, I mean, obviously, I would expect a person to say, what would you want a 6-foot extension lead for? But who knows? Maybe they were thinking best not to ask. I know, Matt. I know. So Surfer Rosa, hi. I gave you a shout out earlier. All right, so now we've got the hotel room. I worked night audit at this semi-swanky hotel next to the airport. One night, I get a call from a lady in room 204. She says they were arguing, loud banging and crying coming out of room 206. I checked the computer. No one is checked into that room due to maintenance issues. I called my supervisor to see what to do. She tells me to call on-site security and follow them up with a key. As we get off the elevator, we hear the crying. It's loud. My heart starts racing as we near the door. So I hand the key to the security guard. The next 5 minutes seem to happen in slow motion. He opens the door and immediately flicks on the light. As we enter the room, the shower is on. Steam is coming from under the door. There's only one lamp on in the room. It's super cold, and there is a lady in red lacy bra, black panties, with super red hair curled up crying in the bed. She was facing away from us. She sort of stopped crying and rolled over. When she did, a wave of horror came over me. She was super pale, covered in blood, and was just staring behind us. That's when we realized the shower had stopped and the door was open. There was a man about 6'5" standing in the doorway. As we turned around, cops tased and arrested him. It turns out he was a rapist who hides in hotel rooms, kidnaps women who stays there, then cuts them open. To this day, I will never go to a hotel again. Great. Lorna Edger, thank you for joining. When my mum's friend's father died, the lights on their wardrobe flashed up and down. They never did it before or since. My granddad flashed the lights up and down in canteen. Oh, you're in hospital. Oh. Well, I hope you or whoever you're there for gets well soon. All right. The locked door. I'm currently a janitor at a gym. We have a stairwell that leads down to some stairs to a door that doesn't open because we lost the keys years ago. One night, there was a loud banging sound coming from the door. It sounded like someone was banging it every second for a couple of minutes. I stood at the top of the stairs and listened and watched as it stopped. It started up a few minutes later. I went back up there to see it stop again, and as soon as I got there, told my manager the next day, went back up there to see, and it stopped again as soon as I got there. Sorry for my reading. I told my manager the next day, and he had a locksmith come in. He got the door open, and it's just an old supply cupboard that's empty. Every so often, someone hears a banging sound coming from the door at the bottom of the stairs. That's a bit boring. Face at the window. Was sitting at a desk in front of a good-sized window, reading a binder. Sort of had that feeling like someone was watching me. So I looked up, and there was a face pressed to the glass. No idea how long he was there before I looked up. Ran out of the foyer. That was where the glass door on the porch should be locked. But it wasn't. He started shaking the door, trying to get in. Ran to the next room, and he just followed me around the house while I was on the phone with the cops, watching me through the windows. They didn't catch him that night. He came back the next night. They caught him. Creepy as F word. The line goes dead. I worked as a transporter in a hospital. About 2 years ago, we moved from an old city hospital into a new state-of-the-art facility. The old hospital was built in the 1930s and was showing its age. At night, it was just plain creepy. Hello, Pumpkin Joanne. Each floor had an east and west wing. The east wing of the fourth floor was the first wing to be shut down, and 2 weeks before the move. One night, around 9:30, I'm up at the floor to get the patient from the west wing. I see a small group of nurses and aides who all used to work on the floor, now closed. Hang on. I see a small group of nurses and aides who all used to work on the now closed east wing. They looked visibly shaken. I walked over to see if everything was okay. They told me that they had decided to walk through their old wing for nostalgia's sake. When they were over there, the phone at the nurse's station started ringing. The computers and phones had not been moved. Not sure what to do, one of the nurses reached over the counter and answered the phone. The nurse told me there was a woman's voice on the other end and that she sounded confused. This is the conversation as best as I can remember it. "This is—" "How can I help you?" asked the nurse. "Hello, who is this?" "I'm a nurse. Is there anything I can help you with?" "Where am I?" "This is—" hospital name. "Are you a patient here?" "Oh, okay." Then the line went dead. That's when the nurse finally looked up at the screen on the phone to see where the call was coming from. The phone gave the room number exactly next to the nurse's station. The rooms by this point had all been cleared out and the phones removed. They could see directly into the room and see that there was nobody there. That's when they bolted towards the west wing, where I was getting out of the elevator. I avoided that wing for the rest of my time there. The elevator. 2 different times I saw someone get on the elevator as I came around the corner. I said, "Hold the door," as the door started to close. It opened back like someone had hit the button. When I get into the elevator, there's no one in it. After that, many times, just as I came around the corner, the elevator door would open and no one was in the elevator. I had not pushed a button or a call button or anything. I would always say thanks when I got in the empty elevator. That'd be me. We have casket room. One of my duties at the mortuary I worked was nighttime body removals. One night, my partner and I showed up around 2 a.m. to grab the paperwork for our removal. When we got inside, we both got the feeling that there was someone there. So we walked through the building, checking to make sure everything was secure and closing all the doors. This included the casket room. Everyone hated the casket room. It was freezing cold year round. It was freezing cold year round. The lights were always uncomfortably dim, no matter what maintenance did to try to fix them. And there was this mannequin in the corner to full military dress that just felt wrong. Yeah, seems wrong. The only people who weren't bothered by the room was the cemetery sales staff, and that's only because they had no souls. That's nice. So my partner and I didn't find anyone, so we lock everything up and head out. We get back an hour later, get our new guests logged in, and decide to get a cup of coffee before leaving. He and I walk towards the kitchen, only to find the casket room door about 3 feet open. It's almost pitch black in there, and I can barely make out the red in the mannequin's uniform. It shouldn't be that close to the door. My partner and I froze for a second. Then I grabbed his wrist, and we backed up into the kitchen and straight out the back door. It honestly felt like we'd gotten too close to the casket room or something, because we felt something bad would have happened. Neither of us would ever go near that room again, even during the day. I could spend time alone in the prep room or crematory, no problem, but I'm not easily spooked. But there was something wrong with that room. This. Holy crap, Karen, I should record when my call light phone goes off, room 306. There is no 306. We call it the ghost light. Is going off again. What now? That sounds fun. I want to play too. I work at a crisis nursery. which is a childcare facility that provides emergency and respite care for children under the age of 7. I used to work graveyards all the time. I have to say first that I'm absolutely a non-believer in paranormal stuff. That being said, at 2 in the morning in a dark room when you and 2 or 3 other girls in the 20s are the only adults in the building, poop gets creepy sometimes. What's this? I will record I will record call light 3069. How can I send it to you? I will walk down the hall and video the rooms to show them. No room 306. Okay. You can message me through Facebook under Karen Waterfield. So if you message it to me, I'll be able to see that. But just know that I don't sit in chat. So for those who may message me, I don't sit in chat. I'm not a typer, I'm a talker. Okay, I'll just move on. The facility I work in was named for a child who was beaten to death by one of their parents. The nursery was started in their name as a way of hopefully preventing other children dying a violent death at the hands of overstressed out carers. So the story goes around, and this kid's spirit haunts the nursery, and it's mostly active at night. They tell me that one of the reasons that everyone thinks this place is haunted is that many different people have reported different children asking about that stuff, and asking why kids are in. Why doesn't that kid have to go to bed while pointing at nothing? I brush it off, basically forget about it. A few weeks later, yes. I don't know whether anyone heard Chris. Okay. A few weeks later, I was in the sleep room, the bedroom where all the kids sleep. There must always be an adult in the room with the children, by myself. I was just chilling, reading a book with a book light. The rest of the room is pitch black and silent. All of a sudden, this kid, probably 4 or 5, sits bolt upright in bed and says, "Hey, how come they aren't asleep? Why do they get to play? I want to play too." All the while pointing at a wall with no kids anywhere in the vicinity. Instant crazy shivers all over me. I was so scared I almost screamed. I refused to be alone in there from that moment on. Rosary beads. My production lead was Catholic and gave me some rosaries away to anyone that wanted them one day. We actually worked swing shift and got off work midnight to 4 a.m. depending on overtime availability. The plant was in a pretty rough part of Fresno, California. One of the guys who took a rosary was young and just started working, so he hadn't saved up the money for a car. He walked home every night a couple of miles through that area. After swing shift, most people have gone to bed and the streets are pretty empty. It was a fall, and it was a little chilly and no moon. He was walking down a run-down block with a field along the side of the street and a couple run-down buildings on the other side. A woman walked out from behind one of the buildings straight up to him. She said, "I'll trade you my ring for your rosary." He was wearing a sweatshirt with a jacket. The rosary was around his neck, under the sweatshirt, and not at all visible. So he asked, "How do you know I have a rosary?" She didn't answer, but said again, "I'll trade you my ring for your rosary." At that point, he brushed past her and walked away fast. When he stopped to look back and see where she was, she had disappeared. The abandoned jail. I used to work at a city hall a few years ago as a security guard. There were abandoned jail cells in the basement. They haven't been used in years, and part of my duty was to patrol them for my squatters, or for any squatters, not for my squatters. I'm getting tired. Are we? It was probably my second time patrolling alone, and things started to get really weird. I went down to the old prison holding cells. It's a long, narrow hallway with cells on both sides. The hallway was lit by a light bulb hanging from the ceiling. I was walking past the fourth column of cells when the lights went out. I turned my flashlight on, walked back towards the light switch. Right when I was about to turn them back on, the lights flickered on again. I started walking past the cells, and while quickly checking them, I was about halfway through when the lights went off again. I heard 2 cells slam. I ran with my flashlight on straight toward the other end of the hallway and up to my workstation. I then called my supervisor and asked him if there were any electrical issues that have been reported. He said no. I've had 2 hours left of my shift and I couldn't leave. I was at my workstation, paranoid as Fungoli. A cry for help. I used to work as a night watchman on a large property, not just a big building, but a large surrounding property as well, probably 50 acres. While this property was not in the best of areas, it was kind of secluded, but had a subdivision nearby. Anyways, it had already been a long driveway, and that was gated. One night, I start my rounds around walking out the front door of the place, which is all lit up. As soon as I lock the door behind me and take a step, I hear a woman's voice scream, "Oh my God, somebody please help!" up at the end of the driveway. It was somewhat faint, and I took 5 running steps into the driveway, skidded to a stop, ran back all the way inside to call the cops. They responded with multiple police cars and even a helicopter. They found absolutely nothing. I still think it could have been someone trying to lure me out there. What do you think? Where's the exit? One of my friends had a job in the hospital looking after patients, making beds, etc. I heard he randomly quit his job. Wouldn't talk to anyone about it. I bring some beers over to his house and try to see if I can get him talking. He's a total emotional wreck. Finally, I get him to talk and he says that he was working one night in the hospital when he heard a nurse shouting for help because someone was going into cardiac arrest. So he ran down the hallway and some man runs towards him. They almost bump into each other and the man shouts, "Where's the exit?" My friend points to the exit, then runs into the room with the man going into cardiac arrest, only to see it's the same person he just ran past him in the hallway. He died in front of his eyes. I guess when you want out, you get out. So let's have a look at our next list. Let me see, what have we got? Okay, so let's have a look at funeral homes. Funeral. I hope you're enjoying these. Something a little different. 10 funeral home workers share their most macabre and morbid stories. Indulge your morbid curiosity and enter a world where death and decay are just a normal part of everyday life. The fear of death is a common one, and there are those who face it every day. Morticians and funeral home workers who make their living from dealing with the dearly departed will tell you that for most, death is a fairly ordinary affair. However, every once in a while, the unexpected happens, and that's when things get a little unsettling. From corpses that walk to encounters with otherworldly presences. Just turn that off now. And the gruesome day-to-day tasks that are just part of the job. In their own words, funeral workers and morticians share their strangest, most macabre stories direct from the morgue. The Walking Dead. My husband used to work in a morgue, and the stories he'd come home with was something else. I'd heard from others in this field of odd experiences of bodies sitting up, presumably from tightening muscles, and one account of a dead man walking past way down a hall before collapsing. My husband said that he stepped away from the settling body out for cleaning. I'll repeat that bit. My husband said he stepped away after setting the body out for cleaning and autopsy, came back and saw the body was gone. He was alone. It was the middle of the night, and he thought he'd gone crazy when he saw the body collapsed in the hall. I can remember my Dutch grandfather talking about how there was a time they had to do some work in a morgue, and in this particular instance, they were trying to prepare a body, and the body, because of the gases or something, sat upright and scared them. Tara Bell says, there's a funeral home beyond my mum's house. Us kids used to dare each other to go look into the windows, never did. We've actually got a university which was made into a university after it being some type of like asylum. And apparently behind it, they've still got rooms that have marks on the wall where they had like all the equipment and everything. So, yuck. Okay, so we've got in death's grip. I used to work in tissue recovery. My least favourite part was prepping a donor for recovery, as it included shaving the arms, legs. Once we had a donor who was very freshly deceased. I held his hand to shave his arm, and his fingers curled around my hand as rigor mortis set in. How would you be? Would you be scared? Moans of the dead. If corpses had a lungful of air, then moving them causes it to release. When the air travels through their throat, you get some minor vocalization, but it's usually just a liquidy gurgle. It still gets me sometimes, though, if I'm working alone. Actually, it reminds me when my cat took her last breath, we were in the vets, and it was a really, really weird noise that she made. It was a really loud sound. It wasn't like a meow. It wasn't like any type of cat sound. It was like a like that, really, really loud. And she was always attached to us, a very close cat. So I think, the fear that she had of what was happening, because this poor thing, it was awful. She began getting tumours after having teeth removed that were causing her eating problems. And what had happened is the vet, they didn't tell me about her inoculations or anything. Didn't even cross my mind because she was an indoor cat. And they had 3 months in that window to have the inoculations up to date and everything like that. And they didn't tell me. They didn't even ask me anything about it until the day I went in. They said, oh, all her inoculations are done. And I said, now, why didn't you ask me that when I made the booking with you 3 months before? And they said, oh, no one asked you. I said, well, why would I be saying, why didn't somebody ask me? And as it turns out, she actually caught something from one of the other animals in there and ended up with tumors. And one tumor was so bad, it was actually pressing on her eye and literally pushed her eye into her cheek. It was just awful, absolutely awful. This poor thing, she started to become, it was like dementia, if you want to put it that way. She was restless. She would want to lie down, then she'd have to get up, and then she'd be getting into spaces that she never even ventured before. It was just really, really awful. So it broke my heart. But anyway, where are we? We're going into the flickering of lights. I'm a nurse, and the only place I've ever seen the lights flicker is just outside the morgue. They are fine almost all the time, but when we bring a body down, the lights always flicker. Really creeps me out. Now, what's interesting, I had an office in Parramatta where I used to do my face-to-face bookings, and there was always one light in the corridor because it was like not on the street or anything. It was actually upstairs, and there was this, what, you know, those long lights. I can't even think of their name. Someone help me out. But that was always flickering. Even if they changed it, I said it's got to be an electrical thing, and it was always flickering. And I had a light box as well with the company logo outside. That's how old it was, you know, like inside this corridor. And that would begin to flicker every time I was in the office. But when I wasn't in the office and the light was on and I would be coming down, it would be okay. But as soon as I was in that office, it was like bang. And lots and lots and lots of energy in that office. Was just phenomenal. Now we've got here the corpse risers. My neighbour a while back before I moved was a mortician. One night he had a body he was preparing for a very early morning wake or service, whatever was going on. It was unusual, and it required him to work into the wee hours of the morning on his particular corpse. Fluorescent lights up here for thinking. So he's working on it. He turned his back to grab some tools and supplies, and the angle he was standing at the regard of the corpse left the body visible just out of the corner of his eye. As he was looking down at whatever tools he was getting, in the corner of his eye, he saw the body slowly start to sit up. His fight-flight instinct immediately kicked in. He ran to the stairs as fast as he possibly could go. But he was so clumsy trying to get up the stairs, he tripped and was pretty much crawling. I can picture this, crawling and clawing his way to the top. He was just near the top before his senses finally came back, and he knew it was rigor mortis. He collected himself and started to laugh at how absurd it was. He'd been doing this for 15 to 20 years at this point, but he'd never had a freak out like that before, where instinct overtook knowledge and experience. Tears of a clown. We had a dead clown one time. This person was buried in full clown costume with makeup and all at the Oh, could you imagine the spirit? I don't want to be visited by clowns. Clowns scare the crap out of me. There was one time, I'll never forget, I was a little girl. I was taken to the circus and I fell over elephant dung. And of course, all my dress had elephant dung on it. And there was this clown who was in the show, and his hat would pop up, like the top of his hat would actually flip up, like, I don't know. He was coming towards me to get me out of this cow thing, not cow thing, out of this elephant poop. And because I was so scared of clowns, I was literally falling more and more into this poop because I was kicking and screaming as he was coming towards me. Oh my God. I will never forget that day. But he ended up being a very nice person. It wasn't until he took the hat off I was okay. I must have been about 5 or 6 or something, but I was terrified. And I can still remember being taken to this little caravan that that was his room type of thing. And my grandmother was with me, and she could not contain the laughter. And now I look back, I mean, at the time I wasn't laughing, I was terrified out of my wits. But yeah, I'm still, I don't like clowns. I don't know what it is. I think it must be like the fact that I can see they've got like a normal expression, but they've got this weird smile that they've painted on. It's like not real. I know that's not real. So yeah, so that's my experience with a clown. So here we have the person was buried in full clown costume with makeup and all. At the family's request, the funeral directors were clowns too. They supplied costume and did our makeup. Family and friends had one teardrop painted on near the eye. The cleanup. A man was brought in to us after lying dead in his garage for 3 weeks in the summertime. Oh, could you imagine? He was covered in bugs. His skin was black and green, and the flesh sloshed around off the bone. I couldn't do anything for that case. He was cremated. Yes, Stephen King's It. Exactly. Minus the funny teeth. Mystery of the Standing Man. Back in med school during an internship at the coroner's, I saw a case when a man in his late 50s was found dead at home. Although under quite peculiar circumstances, his body was found standing, yes, standing, in the bedroom with one leg raised and resting on the bed. Basically, as if he wanted to climb the bed, but suddenly died. Further examination led to severe heart attack as the most likely cause of death. However, no evidence of someone moving the body post-mortem could be found. The conclusion was that either someone would have to have found him quite literally early and basically held the corpse for hours until it became stiff enough to stand on its own, or that his death was so sudden that it happened just in the right moment, so his body would have been perfectly balanced not to fall over. The sound of sobbing. My first experience at work was when I first started my embalming career. I just started my shift and was using a restroom in the back. When I came out, I heard what sounded like a girl sobbing and the sound of her feet shuffling around on the floor. The floor was kind of gravelly and had a distinct sound if you scooted your feet over it. The sound was coming from around a corner that led into a small room where we store embalmed bodies ready to be delivered to their respective funeral home. I figured someone was upset and crying, so I snuck in, still hearing the sobbing. When I peeked around the corner, the room was empty. No living person in there. I noticed that there were only one body in there as well, a young girl. She shot herself in the side of the head. I wasn't scared per se, but I'm pretty sure you could audibly hear my heartbeat. What do you think of that? Life after death. Both my parents are funeral directors. Oh, what a lovely family. Not that there's anything wrong with that, mind you, but could you imagine what friends would you make as a funeral director? I mean, even with some of the, I mean, what conversations would you have, like, over dinner? I know one of our followers have actually, I don't know whether they work in a funeral home or they're a mortician. I'm not too sure which. But enlighten me. I think I'd like to interview somebody who has that background, just to find out a little bit more. I'm curious. So both my parents are funeral directors. At one service, the wife of an older gentleman had passed away. The widower showed up to the funeral with his new girlfriend, who was much younger and was wearing a very revealing outfit. How disrespectful. Whenever the husband would begin to cry, the girlfriend would bring his head to her bosom to comfort him while stroking his hair. Shortly after the ceremony ended, the husband asked one of the funeral directors about the flowers from the funeral. He wanted to know if he could take them with him for his wedding he was having that weekend with his new fiancée. Oh, what an asshole. What do you think? Oh, you'd be thinking, is this guy responsible somehow for this passing, to be so uncaring? I mean, why would you even turn up if that's the case? Tara says, my cousin's wife is a mortician. I asked her why she loved her job. She said she wants to do one last nice thing for a person. That's beautiful. That's nice to know. Well, let's have a look. The next we will talk about will be the Ouija. I think we'll talk about the eeriest experiences with shadow people after that. So let's see. All right. Contacting the spirits. 15 people share their scariest Ouija board stories. Be careful what you do. The Ouija board works like a phone, and anyone can answer your call. There are those who believe that the Ouija board is a direct channel to the dead and a portal for otherworldly entities. Others say it's nothing more than a harmless board game and overactive imaginations. Contacting the spirit world has a long history and has since become a rite of passage for teenagers around the world. But for those of you still left to try it, remember this. The Ouija board works like a phone, and anyone on the other side can answer your call, be they good, bad, or even the devil himself. If you've ever fancied dabbling with the dark or the dark arts and contacting the dead, below I'm about to read and share some people's most terrifying true Ouija board stories that may just change your mind. So let's see. Vanished. We were hanging out at a friend's dorm room and busted out the Ouija board. There were a few of us that used them before and a few who hadn't. that were quite skeptical. It was about 11 p.m. The communication with the board was going quite well. Gary, one of the skeptics, kept calling BS to the whole thing. We convinced him to sit on the floor with us and give it a shot. His first question, is this for real or just a bunch of BS? The planchet zipped to no. Fine, he says, still not believing. Prove it. No sooner he'd finished that statement, the lights in the room flickered and the building's fire alarm went off. This freaked us all out and we left the room to follow the fire alarm procedures. After about 20 minutes, campus safety said it was a false alarm and let us all back into the dorms. When we arrived back up to Gary's room, the Ouija board was gone. No one took it and the room was locked. Where is the Ouija? You know, we could actually write one of those Where's Wally books, but Where's Ouija? And like have a, don't worry. Are you human? To start mine, I'll have to tell you my mum's first. The one and only time she played with it as a kid was enough to last a while. She was with a few friends, all of them in their late teens, and they got their hands on a Ouija board. They sat up in the basement and started asking the standard run-of-the-mill questions. You heard the voice? Which voice? In here? Because I've got Chris intimately interjecting whilst I talk as well. Are we? They set it up in the basement and started asking the standard run-of-the-mill questions. Is someone there? Yes. Are you alone? Yes. Do we know you? Yes. Then they asked to spell its name. By me. D-E-V-I. They didn't let it finish and they all ran upstairs. Fast forward almost 20 years. My mum and I had a few Halloweens ago decided we'd give ourselves a spook and made up our own Ouija board out of paper and a glass. And you know what? That is really effective. I'll tell you my story after this. We started to ask the same questions that are standard. Is someone there? Yes. Are you alone? Yes. Do we know you? No. That piqued my interest. I then asked the one question that I probably shouldn't have. Are you human? No. We packed everything up and shut it down awfully quick. I did the best cleansing I knew of, and for weeks later we had weird experiences in our apartment. So we called a medicine man to cleanse the apartment, but nothing could be found. So I'm going to tell you my story. I'll never forget my first husband. We were mucking around and this was like actually how we met. I did his reading and I said, I can't do your reading. And he said, why? And I said, I just can't, because it came up in the reading that the card that represents me was coming into the picture, and it also showed the marriage card. It showed us getting married, and I didn't even know him, and I was wary. I wasn't looking, wasn't interested, just doing my own thing, keeping to myself. That was my life and how I liked it. And I said to him, look, I'm sorry, I can't do your reading. When he said, why? I said to him, all right, well, it just shows you're going to meet, you've already met this woman and you're going to get married, but I didn't tell him who. And after that, he just started wooing me, writing letters, leaving them under my door. And I had this dream that I was at a club and I was with my friend. We were having a few drinks, and I'm sitting there telling her in my dream, I had a dream that he walks up to the table and he says, "Can I sit with you?" And he's bringing with him a bottle of wine. Now, I'm not a wine drinker at all. If anything, I'm a Scotch and Coke girl. Wine is only for cooking in my books. But anyway, he, in this dream, brings up a wine, puts it down, and he begins pouring a wine. That was the dream. It was so weird. I then go out to a nightclub with my friend, Val, and we're sitting there. It was like deja vu. And I begin telling her about this dream of a dream situation and telling her about, how he's walking towards the table. And she says to me, "Don't look now, but there is a guy that's walking towards our table. And what does he look like?" So she said, "Don't turn around, just tell me." I said, "He's got dark hair. He is Lebanese appearance and big brown eyes, and he's not a skinny person. He's not overweight, but he wasn't skinny either. He was plump." And I said, "But he's a nice person." I said, "Don't tell me he's got a wine in his hand." She said, "Oh my God, yes, he's got a bottle of wine, and he's also got 2 glasses." So I hear this wine bottle go down beside me. I turn around and I said, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening." After that, he was, it's so crazy. He got a job because at one point I would occasionally go and play bingo. Bingo. So he got a job as a bingo caller. And if you don't know what bingo is, it's where they, like housey, they call out numbers. And anyway, I'll just put this on because I'm getting hot. So anyway, he's calling these numbers. I thought, everywhere I'm going, I'm seeing this guy. And it turned out during one of the games, he said, "I'm going to have to stop the game because there's a lady in the room that I need an answer from. And I have done everything possible to get her attention." And in all the room, which is like over 300 people, he sings out, "Karen, I want to ask you something really important. Will you marry me?" I thought, oh my God. I'm like head down with the dabber, and there's no numbers being called. My friend says, "What are you doing? There's no numbers being called out." I said, "Oh, I can't believe he's doing this in front of everybody." But I don't know why. I just, probably to prevent him from being embarrassed, I just said yes. But at that time, it was the best choice I'd ever made. And so that was my proposal. But it was lovely. We were very happy, but his family interfered, and then it was over. But anyway, I still love him to this day. I know it sounds weird, but anyway, going back to the Ouija, he asked one night there, he said, "What are these Ouija things?" And I said, "Oh, just a little fun." And he said, "Let's do a Ouija." And I said, "No, you don't want to. I can't see you doing that." And he said, "Yeah, it's okay. I'll do it." Because I had done a Ouija before at a friend's place, and I think I mentioned it on a live stream where she had lost a baby's book, which keeps all the documentation of inoculations and everything like that, in this book in order for when they go to the doctors and everything. And when the children register for school, they can show that in the blue book there's all this information on the baby. And how they're up to date with all their injections and everything. So she had lost this book and been looking for it for pretty much ever, and she needed it. And she had one room in her home which had a lot of storage boxes in it, like a junk room, if you want to put it that way. And she said, okay, through the Ouija, she said, I said, what questions do you want to ask it? And she said, I might ask, where is that baby's book I've been looking for? And it said, it spelled out the third box in the spare room. So I said, do you mind if we go and have a look? And the board said, no, I don't mind. So we got up, we went into the spare room, and there were boxes everywhere. And I thought, oh my God. So I said, the third box, it said. So I'll just count 1, 2, 3. And we began looking into that. Nothing. We looked into another box. Nothing. The third box we looked in, she put her hand down the side and pulled out the blue book. And it had been gone for almost a year and a half. So that actually led us to finding her missing items. Not only that, when Michael, my first husband, when we were doing the Ouija, it was like the card, like using bits of paper and the glass, and something was there. Something was not right in, and we are actually living in a pretty old, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you've got an old house or a new house, but we were in this old block of units and right in a location where there were quite a lot of abductions and stuff like that. So, I mean, you had to be really careful with your kids because there were people like, you know, the area was not safe. But anyway, besides all that, something came through, and he, that night when he was lying down, he said, something's grabbing me. Something's actually grabbing me. And I'm like, don't be stupid. There's nothing here. I couldn't feel anything there around, probably because it was not allowing me in some way to feel its presence, but there was something there. So the next day, he went into the kitchen. He could hear this rattling coming from the cupboard, and we had like a glass door type of thing with the I don't know whether you're familiar with the like snow glass, they call it. It looks like very foggy type of ripply glass in the old cabinet, and it's got like these LED lighting or leading through it, and it was all like, it looked like a patchwork design. And inside that glass cabinet, we had glasses, crystal, you know, that type of stuff. And he could hear this rattling going on. He didn't think anything of it at first because he thought maybe it's just, you know, like trains going by, because we weren't far from a train track. But then we realized it was the Sunday no trains ran on that day in that area. So he turns around. Next minute, the cupboard door flew open and one of the glasses went right past him and hit the windowsill, which was like it had like tiling over it, and smashed to pieces. And I was in the lounge room, so I could actually see through to the kitchen area where this happened. And I thought, oh my God, are you okay? Because I saw something go past him but couldn't register what it was, and then heard the smash. And he's just standing there dumbfounded, you know, just staring literally into space. And he said, something's trying to get me. And I said, are you sure you didn't drop a glass, you know, that type of thing? But I distinctly saw something go past him, but I just couldn't register the fact that was a glass. And it only happened for about 2 or 3 days after doing that Ouija. But then everything had gone quiet. went back to being quiet. But that was a pretty weird experience. So that's just sharing you the experience I had. Now we've got one. It says, come back soon. I visited an alleged haunted house with one of my teachers and a few friends. We spent the night there. Sometime around 4-ish, we talked to one of the 3 girls who had died of cholera in the 1800s. When we communicated with her, we asked her to show herself, and all she responded with was 11:35. Flash forward to 11:35, and everyone is together and really anxious. 11:35 comes, nothing happens. We all relax. But at 11:40, my teacher claimed she saw a girl in the window. Then the lights flickered on and off once. Then constant, loud, scary knocking on the doors next to us. It was very frightening. After it seemed over, we pulled out the Ouija, and the girl confirmed it was her. The next morning, we find notes saying, come back soon, scattered across the house, written on torn pieces of paper from a notepad that my teacher brought and wrote out the Ouija numbers and words. I think they mean letters. The missing friend. When I was little, my mum took out a Ouija board and asked my brother if I'd like to play with it. If we'd like to play with it. She's generally atheist as well, but has some old tendencies. It's difficult to tell if she legitimately believes in some of the things she says, or if she's just messing with us, because she has pretended to believe a lot of odd stuff in the past just to get a rise out of us. We said yes. So setting up the Ouija in the center of the kitchen table, it started out pretty funny. Something was obviously moving the glass thing, making words like poop and stuff like that. Did I mention we were young enough for that to be hilarious? But then my mum said, let's get serious and try to contact someone. Some mum. Here is where it gets weird. A friend of hers had recently gone missing, had been missing for a month or so, and nobody knew where he was. When we asked who it was we were talking to, his name was spelt out. Let's say it was George. Since I genuinely don't remember, when we asked George if he's my mother's friend, he said yes. My mum gets visibly upset and asks where he was. In a lake was spelt out. I've had the vacuum switch on and off lights, but nothing really scares me. It was extremely upsetting, and we stopped immediately. Mum tried to be lighthearted about it, and since I was young, I believe it was no big deal as well, following her lead. About 2 weeks later, they found George's body. He'd been hit by some car or train or something on a bridge, and his body fell into the nearby lake. Though it was more like a very large pond, it was a reasonably remote place, so nobody had found it for a while. Dragged through dirt. In high school, a couple of friends, my friend's mum and myself, were talking about a local building being haunted. Soil conditions that sell dirt, bark, and other landscaping goods rumoured to be the location of a murder years before. The mum worked there, so we decided to break out the board and give it a shot. I'd never used one before, so I was sceptical from the jump. This is essentially a large warehouse with tall metal racks. Think Costco or Home Depot. Stacked with bags of dirt, manure, bark, and other things like large ceramic flower pots. The board was glow in the dark, so we kept all the lights off. Once we got it started moving around, and once we got started, it started moving around, and I was freaking out already. We asked if someone was there to let us know that that they were, a loud bang that seemed to come from the rafters on the other side of the warehouse occurred. Every question that followed was met with a similar bang from a various location in the warehouse, sometimes close and sometimes far. The last question asked was if it meant us harm, and the thing already was on no. The answer did not move. The question was repeated and immediately followed by the closest noise, yet seemed right on top of us. So we decided to ski effing daddle. I've never heard that before. As we were rushing out, we flipped on our flashlights and saw 1 or 2 large pots fall from the racks and heard what we would later find to be a 40-pound bag of bark dropping to the ground. There was also a slow, loud grinding noise that when my friends returned the next day was a sledgehammer that had been dragged through the dirt, covering cement on the floor, standing straight up in the air with drag marks, but no footprints near. I pretty much believe in ghosts now and sleep with the lights on for a week. Some people are silly. Don't hide from me. A few years ago, my friends, a group of girls, decided to try out with a new group of guys. Okay. They were in the 12th grade at this time. My group of girls had messed around with it before to varying degrees. I'm assuming this is a Ouija they're referring to. Varying degrees of success. Well, this time it was my hands on the planchette. And with my other girlfriend, this was moving crazy fast, faster than I'd ever seen, and seemed to be getting quite agitated by the group of guys who were with us joking around and not taking it seriously. It essentially told them to shut up and stop talking. I told the guys, seriously, please stop being rude. I'm kind of freaked out. Anyway, because I was getting nervous, one of the guys took over. He was a bit more serious about it. Almost immediately, the thing spelled out, "Don't open the door." Well, we were all in the basement, and there was only one door. So we all kind of looked over at it nervously because I was getting anxious. I took the blanket and kind of hid my face. Immediately, it spelled out, "Don't hide from me." Everyone was freaked out. The guy who had his hands on the planchette literally started to cry. He wanted to take his hands off, but we have this rule that you don't just take your hands off until you get it to say goodbye. Everyone wanted to stop, but it took about 10 minutes of asking dumb questions until the thing finally slid to goodbye. Some of the guys speculated afterwards that it meant don't open the metaphorical door of the spiritual world. The reason being is when we told them never to ask for a sign or anything kind of lets the spirit roam free outside the board. Before that, the guy took over. They kept asking for a sign, only for me to cut them off mid-sentence and tell them to knock it off. So this made some sense. Looking back on it, I'm very much a quiet atheist, so not entirely sure what to make of the situation. But I won't touch that thing ever again. That's how much of an impact it left. You're off ice skating. Have fun. I had a lovely Christmas, thank you. And I hope you had a nice one too. Okay. So who's enjoying the stories? Are you getting tired? Well, what I'll do, it's now midnight here, and I am very tired. So I'm going to round it up now and do one more story before we go. And I think I might go to another part because I find the Ouija ones a little bit boring. I'll choose one from 31 terrifying real-life horror stories that will chill you to the bone. So I will just randomly choose. Okay. Midnight Man. I had awesome parents who let me sleep in the living room on weekend nights when I was very young because my sister was a light sleeper and I could stay up until dawn. But of course, I always end up sleeping on the couch because Nick at night made me tired. So one night, I woke up to this prickly feeling, like an instinct just bolted into a sitting position and stared out the front window. We lived in rural Georgia, so you can imagine the magnitude of trees. In perfect light cast from the moon, I see a silhouette of someone who is in the effing tree. The family dog dashes to the window and it's snarling into the glass. Terrified, I ran to my parents' room and try to explain to my parents that there is a strange person outside. Dad grabs something defensive and darts out with the dog to beat wax off the hot head. I tremble in Mama's arms until Dad comes home and he says he saw no one and to go to bed. I decided to sleep in my regular room. I filled my sister in as to what happened. Dad is making regular rounds in the house with a cup of coffee. We're all still and finally think I can sleep. Nope. I notice the man outside my window. From what I can see in the moonlight, he gives me a shh signal and runs away. Just turns around to run a straight line away. I swear I couldn't stop crying for what felt like hours. So what I'm going to do is bid you all a very lovely good night wherever you are. If you're obviously having daytime where you are. Hello, Springtrap. Hi, Janice. Yes, wouldn't it be lovely to have a campfire? I've got a fire pit in the outside, so maybe one night. But there's too many mozzies because they come off the water. I don't know why. There's water right near me and the mosquitoes are phenomenal. I think because they get into the little bits of the mud around the location, so it's such a shame. But anyway, I hope you have a wonderful, happy new year wherever you are. Remember, stay safe. Drive for everyone on the road. In other words, pay attention to drivers around you. Don't take any risks. Don't look away 1 second. Don't answer the phone if you're driving. And this year, especially in every year when it comes to fireworks, put your pets inside, because one of the things that you'll find is the amount of animals that do actually get hit by cars and so on are usually around these times of the year, whenever there are fireworks going off to celebrate the new year and so on. So think of your pets. If you do go out to see the fireworks, keep safe. Try to take public transport, because you don't want your cars being sideswiped and having to, you know, look around for car parks and everything like that. But I really do hope that you have a great start to 2018. I guess that's when I'll be seeing you next, 2018. I hope if Order is watching or following up on this later, that you're okay. I haven't heard back from him, which is quite surprising. So I really do hope that everything's fine. I'm just going to have another look. No, he's still not responded. So if anyone hears from him, let him know. Please contact me. Let me know that everything's fine, because I do worry about these things. Happy 4th day of Christmas. So anyway, I'm going to leave you all. I'm sending you a spiritual hug and prayers that everything is safe over this time of the year. As I mentioned, just keep safe, whatever you do, and be kind to everyone. Be kind to each other, because we don't know how long we've got our family. We don't know how long we've got our friends or our pets, for that matter. So just be kind. Anyway, bye.